The United States is at war, not in the conventional sense of fighting a single defined enemy with conventional weapons, but a battle that's being fought across the globe. And its main rival is not just one country, but a united bloc of them. This is a war to end all wars. It's a war for the future of our planet. It's a war that will determine which nation or nations will be left standing after the dust settles. The global war on talent is heating up as America's greatest enemies form an unstoppable alliance, leaving the US isolated. As we know, it's the 21st century, and the Cold War has gone hot. It's time to take a stand and defend our way of life from those who wish to destroy it. But are the Americans ready for what's coming next? What if BRICS takes over the world? Let's find out. The war on talents is a global conflict between the established world order led by the USA and its allies versus a rising bloc of developing nations known as the BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The war is fought on multiple fronts: economics, politics, military, and culture. For decades, the West has enjoyed uncontested supremacy, dictating global rules and shaping international relations to their favor. However, this dominance is being challenged like never before. As BRICS nations grow closer, they pose a serious threat to Western hegemony. They have significant natural resources, a large and young population, and increasing military capabilities. Moreover, they share common goals: reducing dependence on Western institutions, promoting multipolarity, and seeking fairer global rules. So let's get into the facts and see how this war unfolds, and who would win if the world turns against America. Phase 1: Economic Warfare. The economic front is witnessing fierce competition, with both sides taking strategic moves. The US and its allies impose sanctions and export controls on key technologies, targeting China, Russia, and others. In response, BRICS nations strengthen partnerships, diversify trade, and invest heavily in domestic industries. Trade among BRICS nations is expected to reach $30 trillion by 2030, driven by factors like rising intra-BRICS trade, investments in infrastructure projects, and increasing foreign direct investment flows. The rise of alternative financial systems and currencies also poses a challenge to the dollar's dominance. The BRICS New Development Bank, also known as the BRICS Bank, is a key player in this shift. Initially focusing on infrastructure and development projects within BRICS nations, the bank has expanded its operations and now extends loans to non-BRICS developing nations, offering an alternative to traditional Western-led financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. Additionally, BRICS nations are exploring the creation of a common currency, although substantial progress in this area hasn't been made yet. Phase 2: Political Confrontation. On the political front, tensions escalate as both sides compete for influence. The US and its allies form strategic partnerships, but face criticism for perceived neo-colonial practices. BRICS nations advocate for a multipolar world, non-alignment, and peaceful coexistence, criticizing Western hegemony and advocating for reforms in global governance. BRICS is becoming increasingly vocal in international affairs, speaking with one voice to address shared concerns and interests. At the 2023 summit in Johannesburg, South Africa, BRICS leaders criticized Western sanctions and called for reforms in international organizations like the UN Security Council to reflect current geopolitical realities. The bloc's growing political clout was evident when it successfully lobbied for a ceasefire in Gaza during the recent war between Israel and Palestine, showcasing their potential to play a larger role in global peacemaking efforts. Phase 3: Military build-up. Militarily, the global war on talent is reflected in significant defense investments. The US and its allies maintain large defense budgets and advanced weapon systems, while BRICS nations prioritize domestic defense industries and partnerships. China's People's Liberation Army has become the largest military force globally. Russia's nuclear arsenal remains substantial, and Brazil, India, and South Africa enhance defense capabilities. Notably, joint exercises and technology transfers are increasing among BRICS nations, fostering interoperability and cooperation. The momentum behind the bloc's collective military growth is undeniable. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, military expenditure as a percentage of gross domestic product, GDP, has been on the rise for many BRICS nations. For instance, China's military spending as a percentage of GDP increased from 1.9% in 2000 to 7.2% in 2023. Similarly, India's military expenditure as a percentage of GDP went from 1.9% to 4.2% during the same period. Russia's percentage remained high at around 5.5%. These figures indicate a clear trend of prioritizing defense and security in their national budgets. Additionally, several BRICS nations have initiated ambitious weapons development programs. China has invested heavily in developing advanced fighter jets, aircraft carriers, and a growing blue water navy. Russia continues to modernize its nuclear arsenal and develop advanced hypersonic weapons. India has launched major programs to indigenously produce advanced towed weapon systems, advanced towed artillery guns, and more. Brazil and South Africa have focused on enhancing their air defense systems and overall defense industrial capabilities. This arms race highlights each nation's commitment to strengthening its own defense capabilities. But there's a twist in the tale. As the US finds itself increasingly isolated, Europe too is caught in the crossfire. Some European countries are already hedging their bets, engaging in extensive trade with China, and seeking closer ties with Russia. As the world reorders itself, alliances are shifting, and no one can predict where the loyalties will lie. What does this mean for World War III? The outcome of this global conflict hinges on the choices made by key players, particularly the Europeans. If Europe aligns with the US, the combined economic and military power of the West could potentially overwhelm the BRICS alliance. However, if Europe chooses neutrality or worse, aligns with the BRICS bloc, it would significantly weaken the US position, making victory much more challenging. Now let's do some more hypotheticals. In a scenario where the world turns against America, it's hard to imagine the US prevailing due to its geographic isolation. Its vast distances from the rest of the world make sea and land invasions unlikely. However, the US could face challenges defending its territories from air and cyber attacks. With most of the world united against it, the US would be vulnerable to missile strikes and drone attacks, especially considering the advanced capabilities possessed by nations like China, Russia, and North Korea. Cyber attacks would also be rampant, targeting critical infrastructure and aiming to disrupt essential services. Furthermore, with potential sanctions and trade embargoes from the majority of countries, the US would need to rely solely on its domestic resources, which may not be sufficient to sustain it in the long term. Additionally, the US could face diplomatic isolation, with countries refusing to engage with it, limiting its ability to seek alliances and support. In such a scenario, the US would need to adopt a defensive posture, prioritizing homeland security and the protection of its vital interests. The focus would be on defending against external threats while minimizing involvement in global affairs. Unfortunately, this means that America would likely withdraw further into itself, doubling down on its isolationist policies and building up its defenses. Who would win World War III? The chances of the US winning a war against the entire world are slim. With most of the world united against it, the US would struggle to defend its territories from air and cyber attacks. While it may not face large-scale invasions, its vulnerability to missile strikes and drone attacks would be significant. Cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure would also pose a major challenge. Additionally, economic sanctions and trade embargoes would strain the US resources. Without international cooperation, it would be difficult for the US to sustain itself in the long run. Ultimately, the US would likely need to adopt a defensive stance prioritizing homeland security. Winning such a war would be highly improbable given the overwhelming odds against it. So there you have it. The world turns against America and the BRICS alliance rises, leaving the US isolated. It's a scenario that might seem far-fetched, but it's not entirely impossible in today's unpredictable geopolitical landscape. The BRICS bloc is growing stronger and more influential by the day, so who knows what the future holds? Perhaps the US will find a way to bridge its differences with its rivals and forge a path toward cooperation. Or maybe it will find itself on the opposite side of the battlefield, facing a united front of nations that no longer want to be dictated to. Only time will tell how this story will unfold. What do you think? Would the US be able to withstand a full-scale assault from the rest of the world? How would it fare against such a powerful alliance? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We appreciate your insights and encourage your active participation in our discussions. Thank you for joining us in today's episode. Stay tuned for more updates. Take care.